Marisol stood on the balcony of her small apartment, staring at the pale blue dot hanging in the sky. It had been 3 months since her brother, Javier, had left for the lunar research colony. Every morning she pressed her coffee mug between her hands, hoping it would warm her as much as his presence once did. The silence in the hallways, once filled with their laughter and shared jokes, now felt like an echo of what was lost. She missed him more than she thought possible. Back when they were children, Marisol and Javier would build model rockets in their backyard. They imagined themselves as explorers, planting flags on new worlds. Now, the model rocket sat on a shelf, gathering dust. Marisol touched one small replica and closed her eyes, remembering Javier's proud grin when their first homemade engine actually lit. The memory brought a tight knot to her chest. She wanted to talk to him. But every time she tried, her throat clogged with unshed tears. Technology was supposed to bridge any distance. She had a holocommunicator, a link that could send her face and voice across 38,000 kilometers of space. Yet each time she pressed the call button, she hesitated. Would he still laugh at her jokes? Would he share news of new discoveries? Or would the light-year delay make their conversation awkward? Each failure to connect left her feeling more distant, as if the moon itself had grown between them. One evening, Marisol wandered into the workshop she had converted from a spare bedroom. Javier had left behind his tools, wires, small motors, and circuit boards. She opened a drawer and found a thin metal disc they once used to experiment with solar arrays. An idea sparked in her mind. Maybe words alone were not enough. Maybe she needed to send something tangible, something filled with Earth's warmth. She gathered old voice recordings, clippings of her laughter, sound of rain tapping against her window, the echo of her footsteps on the hallway tiles. She wove them into a short audio collage, adding a message. Javi, you are not alone. Earth misses you, and I miss you most of all. Then she rummaged for a memory chip and soldered the recordings onto it. She even added a tiny sensor that would shimmer whenever a listener picked it up, as if greeting them. Next, she packed a small box with seeds from her rooftop garden toe, basil and wildflowers that released a gentle fragrance. She hoped the smell of Earth would comfort him on the cold, airless colony. For weeks, she worked late into the night, assembling a compact transmission pod. It was crude compared to the colony's official mail drones, but Marisol believed that her brother would recognize the human touch in every imperfect weld. When the pod was finished, she carried it to the small launch pad at the edge of town. It sat beside supplies bound for the colony, scientific instruments, clothing, food. Marisol stepped forward, heart pounding. She pressed her palm to the pod's activation switch. A soft hum filled the air as the pod zipped skyward, headed for the relay station in lunar orbit and then on. To Javier.Marisol watched until the pod shimmered into a streak of light against the night sky. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please get this, Javi." The pods were reliable, but there was always a delay. 3 days for transmission, 3 days for confirmation. For 6 days, she stalked her apartment, checking her holocommunicator at every hour. She brewed tea and tried to keep busy with work, but her thoughts always drifted back to that silver pod racing through space. On the 7th night, as she sat on the balcony, her communicator buzzed softly. Message request flashed. Incoming. Personal transmission from Sierra Station. Marisol's heart leaped. She pressed accept, and there he was, Javier's face, tired but smiling, filling the holographic frame. Around him, the sterile walls of the colony looked stark, yet his eyes glowed with surprise and relief. "Marisol," he said, voice breaking, "I got your pod. I heard your laugh. I smelled the basil." He held up a small seedling in a clear container, its 2 green leaves reaching toward the low gravity. "I planted them today. It feels like home." Tears rolled down Marisol's cheeks as she reached out to touch his hologram. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I never stopped believing in you." That moment distance dissolved. Words had failed them at first, but humanity's persistence, their will to connect, to build, to hope spoke louder than any silence. Marisol realized that no matter how far apart they were, they carried the same heartbeat, the same spirit of invention and love. Their HFY shone in every signal sent, every seed planted, every memory shared. As the transmission ended, Marisol pressed her hand to her heart. The sky was vast, but she no longer felt alone. Hope had found a way across the void, and so had the quiet strength of humanity. Javier stood before the viewport, watching the blue marble of Earth spin slowly against the black sky. He pressed his palm to the glass, hoping to feel a spark of the warmth he remembered on Earth's surface. Each star outside seemed to remind him of the distance between him and his sister Marisol. He thought of her coffee mugs warming her hands on cold mornings, and their shared laughter echoing down familiar hallways. Now the silence in his quarters felt heavier than any gravity he had experienced on the moon. Every breath he took carried the weight of his yearning, more than he had ever thought possible. He left the observation deck and walked into the hydroponic dome. Rows of green plants glowed under soft lights. He reached out and touched a basil leaf, remembering how Marisol had sent him seeds from her rooftop garden. The gentle scent filled his lungs and brought tears to his eyes. He closed his eyes and let the fragrance carry him back to Earth for a moment. Then he opened them and saw the sterile metal walls around him. He realized that smell alone would not be enough to close the gap between them. Back in his living quarters, Javier sat at his small desk and powered up his holocommunicator. He watched the last message he had received from Marisol, her smile shimmering in 3 dimensions as she held the young sprout he had planted. He replayed her laughter, letting it wash over him. He wanted to answer her, but the words felt trapped in his throat. He stared at the blank text field and wondered how to express everything he felt. The blinking cursor taunted him with its emptiness. He tried to speak into the mic. His voice came out as a soft crackle. He swallowed hard. Another attempt, and the words tangled in his throat. He realized that simply talking would not capture the depth of his feelings. The holocommunicator was a wonder of technology, yet it fell short when it came to the heart. He set the device aside, frustrated. He wanted Marisol to feel his hope, his endurance, his love, his humanity. That night, Javier sat at his workbench, the soft hum of the station's life support systems in his ears. He pulled out a clean sheet of titanium alloy and a fine-tip stylus. He wrote a letter to Marisol in simple sentences, describing the way he missed her voice and how he watched Earth every day. He sketched the curve of the planet as he saw it. Through the viewport, he poured his heart into every line. When he finished, he folded the metal sheet and slipped it into his pocket, in the lab section. He gathered scrap wiring, a small speaker, a memory chip, and a translucent casing. He set the pieces on his bench and took a deep breath. His training as an engineer told him it could work. His heart told him it had to work. He soldered the chip to the wiring, attached the speaker, and sealed the unit inside the casing. Tested it with a sample audio file. Marisol's laughter emerged clear and bright. He smiled for the first time in days. Next, he searched the station's hydroponic stores for seeds. Official protocols forbade personal packages, but Javier believed a small act of kindness could overcome any rule. He found microbasil shoots' fragile green leaves curled in their tiny containers. He gently harvested a few and placed them in a sealed vial filled with nutrient gel. These were living reminders of Earth's soil. He taped the vial to the device casing and added his folded letter inside. Javier wrote a final note to Marisol. With all my hope, plant these on Earth. Let them remind you of our bond. He tucked it into the package and examined his work. The device looked crude, but every scratch and solder joint carried his determination. It was humanity's spirit in a small pod. He carried the package to the station's cargo bay. A supply ship was preparing for departure to the relay hub in Earth orbit. He slipped the pod among approved parcels, heart hammering. The automated manifest scanner beeped, but did not flag the pod. It was his secret gift to Marisol and to all humans who believed in connection across space. After he watched the ship depart, Javier returned to his quarters. He gazed again through the viewport at the distant planet. His chest felt lighter. He had sent more than seeds and a message. He had sent his will to bridge the distance. Now he only had to wait. Days passed. Javier kept himself busy with station duties, but every hour he checked for a response, found solace in small routines, tending the hydroponic dome, calibrating sensors, and folding his letter over and over in his mind. He repeated Marisol's laughter in his head. He allowed himself to hope. Finally, transmission came through the station network. An incoming personal message from Earth's relay. Javier's heart lurched. He activated the holocommunicator, and there she was, Marisol's face bright. With surprise and joy, the basil seedlings he had sent were sprouting on her balcony. She held the small device he had made, and his recorded laughter played softly. Tears ran down. Javier stood before the viewport, watching the blue marble of Earth spin slowly against the black sky. He pressed his palm to the glass, hoping to feel a spark of the warmth he remembered on Earth's surface. Each star outside seemed to remind him of the distance between him and his sister, Marisol. He thought of her coffee mugs warming her hands on cold mornings, and their shared laughter echoing down familiar hallways. Now the silence in his quarters felt heavier than any gravity he had experienced on the moon. Every breath he took carried the weight of his yearning. He missed her more than he had ever thought possible. He left the observation deck and walked into the hydroponic dome. Rows of green plants glowed under soft lights. He reached out and touched a basil leaf, remembering how Marisol had sent him seeds from her rooftop garden. The gentle scent filled his lungs and brought tears to his eyes. He closed his eyes and let the fragrance carry him back to Earth for a moment. Then he opened them and saw the sterile metal walls around him. He realized that smell alone would not be enough to close the gap between them. Back in his living quarters, Javier sat at his small desk and powered up his holocommunicator. He watched the last message he had received from Marisol. Her smile, shimmering in 3 dimensions as she held the young sprout he had planted. He replayed her laughter, letting it wash over him. Thought he wanted to answer her, but the words felt trapped in his throat. He stared at the blank text field and wondered how to express everything he felt. The blinking cursor taunted him with its emptiness. He tried to speak into the mic. His voice came out as a soft crackle. He swallowed hard. Another attempt, and the words tangled in his throat. He realized that simply talking would not capture the depth of his feelings. The holocommunicator was a wonder of technology, yet it fell short when it came to the heart. He set the device aside, frustrated. He wanted Marisol to feel his hope, his endurance, his love, his humanity. That night, Javier sat at his workbench, the soft hum of the station's life support systems in his ears. He pulled out a clean sheet of titanium alloy and a fine-tip stylus. He wrote a letter to Marisol in simple sentences, describing the way he missed her voice and how he watched Earth every day. He sketched the curve of the planet as he saw it. Through the viewport, he poured his heart into every line. When he finished, he folded the metal sheet and slipped it into his pocket in the lab section. He gathered scrap wiring, a small speaker, a memory chip, and a translucent casing. He set the pieces on his bench and took a deep breath. His training as an engineer told him it could work. His heart told him it had to work. He soldered the chip to the wiring, attached the speaker, and sealed the unit inside the casing. He tested it with a sample audio file. Marisol's laughter emerged clear and bright. He smiled for the first time in days. Next, he searched the station's hydroponic stores for seeds. Official protocols forbade personal packages, but Javier believed a small act of kindness could overcome any rule. He found microbasil shoots' fragile green leaves curled in their tiny containers. He gently harvested a few and placed them in a sealed vial filled with nutrient gel. These were living reminders of Earth's soil. He taped the vial to the device casing and added his folded letter inside. Javier wrote a final note to Marisol. With all my hope. Plant these on Earth. Let them remind you of our bond. He tucked it into the package and examined his work. The device looked crude, but every scratch and solder joint carried his determination. It was humanity's spirit in a small pod. He carried the package to the station's cargo bay. Supply ship was preparing for departure to the relay hub in Earth orbit. He slipped the pod among approved parcels, heart hammering. The automated manifest scanner beeped, but did not flag the pod. It was his secret gift to Marisol and to all humans who believed in connection across space. After he watched the ship depart, Javier returned to his quarters. He gazed again through the viewport at the distant planet. His chest felt lighter. He had sent more than seeds and a message. He had sent his will to bridge the distance. Now, he only had to wait. Days passed. Javier kept himself busy with station duties, but every hour he checked for a response. Found solace in small routines, tending the hydroponic dome, calibrating sensors, and folding his letter over and over in his mind. He repeated Marisol's laughter in his head. He allowed himself to hope finally. A transmission came through the station network, an incoming personal message from Earth's relay. Javier's heart lurched. He activated the holocommunicator, and there she was, Marisol's face bright. With surprise and joy, the basil seedlings he had sent were sprouting on her balcony. She held the small device he had made, and his recorded laughter played softly. Tears ran down Javier's cheeks as he reached toward her hologram. "You," she whispered. "You never stopped believing in us." In that moment, distance dissolved again. The fragile seeds had grown into proof that human hope could flourish anywhere. Javier felt the quiet strength of humanity in every pixel of that hologram. No matter where people lived, they would find a way to connect. And that was the greatest triumph of all. Mara stood in her kitchen, watching tiny green sprouts push through the soil in her new hydroponic kit. She had built it herself, following a basic design she found online. Still, every time she looked at those fragile leaves, her chest tightened. She missed Javier's guidance, how he had taught her to care for plants back on Earth. Now the sprouts felt like symbols of her loneliness. She reached out to touch a leaf, then pulled her hand back. Their last exchange had brought them closer, but weeks had passed since she heard his voice. The holocommunicator remained silent. Each empty hour reminded her of the distance between Earth and the moon station. She felt sad and didn't know what to do. Marisol wiped her hands on her apron and paced the small room. She thought of Javier's hydroponic dome on the station, rows of shining green. Under soft lights, she wondered how it felt to tend plants in low gravity, to watch roots drift in nutrient mist. She wanted to share her own experiments so they could learn together. But she worried her efforts would seem small compared to his advanced lab. Still, she refused to let doubt win. Humanity thrived by trying new things, by daring to reach out across the void. Marisol gathered her notes, sketches of her kit, and a small sensor she soldered to record humidity and temperature. She tapped out a clear message. "Xavi, I built this mini garden. I want to share data with you. What do you have to tell me how to improve it?" Her fingers shook as she pressed send. That night, Marisol slept uneasily. She dreamed of empty corridors and silent screens. She woke to a soft beep. Her communicator lit up. Data request from Sierra Station. Her heart thundered. She opened the connection and saw Javier's face, eyes bright with curiosity. Behind him, the hydroponic dome glowed. He held a tablet showing her sensor readings. "Marisol," he said, voice warm, "this is amazing. Your sensors show my dome is too dry at night. I will adjust the mist cycle, and I'll send you a new program to control humidity." He smiled, and for a moment the space between them vanished. Marisol exhaled a breath she did not know she held. Over the next days, they worked side by side through the communicator. She uploaded her code, he sent back tweaks. They timed experiments, watched roots grow, and shared every success and failure. Each morning she checked the sprouts, and each evening she watched his dome respond to her suggestions. Their collaboration wove their lives together again. One evening, Marisol stepped onto her balcony with a small tray of microgreens, basil, arugula, and kale she had trained under LEDs. She breathed deeply, tasting new hope. A fresh message blinked on her device. "Surprise for you, Javier's face filled the screen, holding a single leaf from his lunar garden. "I grew this leaf for you," he said. "Plant it on Earth and remember our work." Tears glistened in Marisol's eyes as she accepted the leaf. In that moment, she saw that distance could not stop human spirit. Their bond had stretched across space, strengthened by invention and care. She placed the lunar leaf next to her seedlings and whispered, "Together, always." And under the quiet sky, two hearts reached across the void, proof that hope endures wherever humanity dares to grow. Javier woke to the soft pulse of morning lights in his lunar station room. His eyes were dry and his chest felt hollow. He hadn't heard from Marisol in over a week. The last time they had spoken was inside the shared virtual garden he had built for her. She had smiled and said she felt him close. But after that, silence. At first, he told himself she was just busy. Maybe Earth's communication system was having delays. Maybe her work had picked up. Maybe she was simply tired. But the days kept passing. Every time he powered up his communicator, there were only blank screens and old recordings. Her voice. Outside the station, the stars sparkled like diamonds, but Javier felt none of their beauty. He stood in the observation bubble, watching Earth rise slowly above the horizon. It looked peaceful, so full of life, but it also felt far away. Too far. A lump rose in his throat. Was their connection fading? Had the distance finally built a wall too high for even their hope to climb? He returned to the hydroponic dome, hoping the plants would ease his mind. The basil leaves she had sent him were still healthy, their green vibrant against the silver trays. He leaned close, breathed in their scent, and remembered the day she had told him about her garden. "I'm growing life on a rooftop," she'd said proudly. "Just like you're growing life on the moon." The memory gave him an idea. If she wasn't answering, maybe he could try something different, something she could see and feel. Maybe he couldn't bring her to the moon, but he could send a message big enough for her to see from Earth. Something that showed he hadn't given up. Something that said, "I'm still here, still care." He raced to the storage room and opened the supply lockers. He found long rolls of reflective foil, usually used to line solar panels. Then he dragged them to the airlock of the dome and called the AI assistant. "Calculate optimal ground angle for visibility from Earth," he instructed. The AI replied with a map overlay and an estimate. A shape spanning 80 meters, located on the external upper surface, will be visible during Earthrise for 37 seconds. That was enough. For the next 5 days, Javier worked outside the station. During every free hour, clad in his pressurized suit, he used clamps and microthrusters to carefully lay out the reflective strips in a pattern. From above, it would look like nothing special. But from Earth, if the light hit it just right, it would shine like a message of silver across the moon's surface. He shaped it into a single word. High, simple, bold, clear. A greeting full of warmth. A word that didn't ask for much, but offered everything. Finally, the structure was complete. He returned inside, breathless and sore, programmed the orbital satellite camera to capture the first Earth-visible image. The next Earthrise was hours away. He waited by the communicator, staring at the screen, fingers crossed. On Earth, Marisol sat on her rooftop garden under the stars. She had been feeling tired. The world had been noisy, and she had pulled away from everything, even Javier. But tonight, something inside her stirred. She looked up at the moon, wondering if he was awake, if he missed her too. Her communicator beeped. She opened the message, and her heart stopped. A photo from orbit taken by the station satellite filled the screen. Across the moon's gray surface, shining clear and silver, was a giant eye. She gasped and brought her hands to her face. "Javi," she whispered, "you built this?" A second message came through. Short video from Javier. Played. "Marisol," he said, his face lit by the soft glow of the dome behind him. "You don't have to answer if you're tired. Just know that I'm here. I miss you. And I'll keep waving from the moon until you wave back." Marisol laughed. Through her tears, that moment, she realized something powerful. Humanity had always found ways to connect. Across oceans, deserts, and now space. They didn't give up, didn't stay silent. They found ways to say, "You matter to me." Even if it meant spelling it out on the moon, she typed back a simple reply. "I see you, Javi. I miss you too." Then she stood and looked up again. The moon glowed above her, and somewhere out there her brother was smiling, waving silently through stars. Their hope hadn't faded. It had just waited quietly, like the moon itself ready to shine again. Marisol sat quietly in her rooftop garden, her hands resting in the soil, though she hadn't planted anything that day. The stars above looked peaceful, but her heart felt heavy, even after Javier's beautiful message from the moon, the giant high. Spelled out in shining foil, she hadn't spoken to him again. She had replied with, "I miss you too," and he had smiled in return. But after that, silence returned. She didn't know why.
Oh.
Maybe they both felt unsure of what to say next. Maybe work on the moon had gotten busy again. Or maybe it was just the way life moved always forward, never stopping.
House.
Even when your heart wanted to hold on. She stared up at the moon, now rising above the city skyline. It looked calm and steady, the same as always. Somewhere up there, her brother was walking among metal corridors and growing green plants in silver domes. He was doing important things. She was proud of him, but she also missed their old life, their small apartment, their talks over coffee, the way they could sit in silence and still feel close. Marisol wanted to reach out again, but she didn't want to bother him. God. She didn't want to sound needy or silly. What if he was too busy? What if her message just made things awkward? Let out a slow breath. Then she looked around her rooftop. There were plants everywhere, basil, mint, tomatoes, even some tall sunflowers. She had worked so hard to make this space beautiful. And suddenly, a small idea bloomed in her mind. She stood up, brushed the dirt off her hands, and went inside to her computer. Pulling up a mapping program, she began sketching her rooftop garden from above. She noticed how the garden rows formed soft lines. With some work and maybe a few moves, she could create a shape that someone might see from space, just like Javier's high. Excited, she grabbed a notebook and started planning. She moved pots, rearranged planting beds, and used leftover tiles to fill in open areas. For 3 days, she worked from morning to night. Neighbors peeked over their balconies, curious, but she only smiled and kept working. Slowly, the shape took form. On the 4th night, she stood at the edge of the roof, looking down at her creation, a heart. It's a big, clear heart, made from green leaves and flower petals. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of feeling. She took photos and uploaded them to the shared Earth-Moon database. Then she added a message. "You waved from the moon. Now I'm waving back from Earth. Still here, still proud." Her hands trembled a little, but her heart felt lighter. On the moon, Javier was fixing a humidity sensor when the alert came through. Incoming message from Earth. He wiped sweat from his brow and opened the file. At first, he saw only a garden from above. Then he saw the shape, the heart. And then he read her message. He sat down on the bench beside his hydroponic bed, holding his helmet in his lap. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then slowly, a smile spread across his face. She hadn't forgotten. She was still with him. Even across the stars, he tapped his communicator and recorded a message. "Marisol, I saw it. I really saw it. You grew me a heart," he said, laughing through his tears. "You're amazing, and no matter how far I am, I promise I'll always be waving back." Later that evening, he projected the image of her garden heart inside the dome for all the crew to see. Everyone stopped for a moment. Even the tired scientists and quiet engineers stood in silence, watching the glowing heart float above the plants. It reminded them of something deeper than science, of connection, of care, of what it meant to be human, back on Earth. Marisol watched her communicator. A new message arrived. She opened it and saw Javier holding a tiny clay pot in his hands. Inside it was a single sprout with round green leaves. "I'm growing this from one of your seeds," he said in the video. "On the moon, in your honor. It's not just a plant. It's a piece of home." Marisol smiled, her chest full of warmth. She reached out to touch the screen, even though she couldn't really feel him, in that quiet rooftop garden. Under the sky full of stars, she realized something. Hope didn't always come from big speeches or perfect words. Sometimes it came from small acts of love, like waving with foil or growing a heart with flowers. And that was the real power of humanity, to care even across a distance, to try even when it was hard, to keep reaching out even when the silence felt endless. Because as long as they kept waving he from the moon, she from Earth, they were never truly alone. It was late evening on Earth when Marisol stood once more on her rooftop. A gentle breeze moved through the leaves of her garden. The heart shape she had made was still there, bright and green, but a few petals had fallen. Time was passing. Looked up at the moon. It shone softly, quiet and far away. A part of her still wished Javier could be standing right beside her, laughing and pointing out constellations like he used to, though they had spoken through messages, shared pictures, and even waved across space. Marisol still felt the distance. Their connection was strong, but it wasn't the same. Sometimes she missed the little things, the casual moments, the easy silence, the way she could knock on his door without thinking. She picked up her communicator. No new messages. She didn't blame him. He was busy on the lunar station working with his team. She just wished there was a way to truly be with him again, not just through recordings or VR gardens. Marisol sat on the edge of the rooftop, watching the stars. A thought came to her small at first, but growing stronger with each heartbeat. What if ... she went there? Not forever, not as a scientist. But what if she visited the moon? Was that even possible? She pulled out her old tablet and searched the lunar station's public program. There it was. A new civilian visit opportunity being tested by the Earth-Moon Partnership. Not many had applied, just a few volunteers, mostly family members of crew. The program wasn't perfect yet, and the journey would be long and expensive, but it was real. Her heart pounded. Could she do it? She didn't tell Javier. Not yet. She wanted it to be a surprise, just like his high message. She spent the next few weeks preparing physical training, safety lessons, basic low-gravity orientation. It was hard. Gear was heavy, the schedule strict, and there were moments when she almost gave up. But every time she thought of quitting, she remembered something. Humanity had crossed oceans, climbed mountains, built homes on planets and moons, not just to explore, but to reach each other. To say, I'm still here, I still care. That thought kept her going. Finally, the day came. She boarded the shuttle, heart racing. As Earth grew smaller behind her and the stars stretched across her view, Marisol whispered, I'm coming, Javi. On the moon, Javier was working late in the hydroponic dome when the station AI sent him a message. Incoming transport passenger disembarking. Family member clearance confirmed. He stared at the screen. Family? He said aloud, confused. I wasn't told ... double quotes. Then the inner airlock door opened, and there she was. Marisol stood there in a white station jumpsuit, her hair tied back, her cheeks red from excitement and nerves. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Javier rushed forward, and though the low gravity made the moment float oddly, it was perfect. I thought I'd come see your garden for real, she said, her voice shaking. Javier laughed, eyes shining. You crossed space just to say that? I miss knocking on your door, she whispered. He pulled her into a hug, gentle in. The moon's light pool, round them, the green plants shimmered under the artificial lights, silent witnesses to their reunion. That night, they sat together under the station's viewing dome. Earth was just a glowing ball in the sky, but it didn't feel so far away anymore. Marisol looked at her brother and smiled. We made it, she said. We did, he replied, and we'll keep making it. They didn't need many words. Just sitting there, side by side, was enough. Marisol's visit was short, just 2 weeks, but every moment was full of meaning. She helped water the plants, learned to move in low gravity, and watched Earthrise with Javier each morning. The crew welcomed her with kindness, and even after she left, her presence lingered in every corner she touched. When she returned home, the distance no longer felt like a wall. It was still there, but now it was filled with memories, shared laughter, real hugs, the warmth of being together. And when Marisol looked up at the moon each night, she didn't feel sad. She felt proud. Proud of what they had done. Proud of what humans could do, because even across space, across silence, across fear and doubt, they had found each other again. That was the heart of being human, the will to hope, the courage to reach, strength to love, no matter how far.